Now, something else that's been in the Marvel universe that has been entertaining me recently is Spider-Man No Way Home. Sony shot me out the 4K Blu Ray to review. Let's talk a little bit about that. Now, this is interesting because I thought the movie was really cool when I saw it in the theaters, but I did have some issues with it, primarily based on how much was leaked and released as part of the marketing. It really drove me crazy that I knew about so much stuff that was headed our way. I absolutely loved the energy of the movie and the performances from everybody, but I wanted to revisit this film, and I actually purchased it as a digital file, and I watched it a little while ago, and then I watched it again on 4K Blu-ray, and I watched it again with my kid. So I have seen it 4 times now. And one of the things that I'm discovering about Spider-Man No Way Home is that it is eminently rewatchable. There's so much fantastic stuff in this movie. Not, of course, all of the extra spider lore and Willem Dafoe's incredible Green Goblin and all the other actors playing these villains that we've known from the previous Spider films, and of course, spoiler alert if you haven't seen or don't know that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are in there. There's just a lot of heartwarming stuff, but at the center of it is just this relationship between Spider-Man and Peter Parker and his friends, basically. It's just very heartfelt and very human and humorous, and there's been a lot of the stacking on those relationships over these 3 movies that John Watts has directed in the vein of the John Hughes films from the 80s, and I've loved all of it. I've loved the journey that they've taken us on, and so the center of this film really speaks to me. I do feel like there was no way to avoid some of the pitfalls of making this gimmicky. There was no way, because they only have 2.5 hours or something like that, and so not every villain really gets their full glory, and has their story completely fleshed out. I feel like Jamie Foxx's Electro is a little bit underutilized and a little nonsensical, doesn't have the same kind of resonance or weight emotionally as Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, especially. And the other, we know, because we've been talking about Spider-Man No Way Home for a long time now, that some of the actors weren't actually even on set. And you can kind of feel that. I also felt like some of the motivations from Doctor Strange felt a little bit engineered strictly to service the plot, and they didn't feel completely true to the character and his growth as a superhero. He felt a little immature and cavalier about some of the things that were going on. But of course, it does serve the plot, and there is this really wonderful thing that happens with Spider-Man sort of claiming his empathy and his responsibility through the course of this film. And I love the central theme of this thing is about redemption and about forgiveness and about trying to help these people rather than cart them off to their death. And I was really profoundly affected by that on subsequent viewings. I think some of that stuff didn't really register with me the same way when I saw it the first time, because I was kind of waiting for the surprise beats that I knew were headed my way. And I enjoyed them when they happened the first time, but I appreciated them more on subsequent viewings. And of course, the 4K resolution is absolutely stunning. It looks good on streaming for sure, but it does look, crystal clear when you've got a 4K Blu-ray setup. I played this on the PlayStation 5, which seemed quite fitting. And it looked great. And of course, one of the great things that you get with whether you pick it up digitally or you pick it up as a Blu-ray now is you get all the behind the scenes. And there's some awesome stuff kind of sort of profiling the efforts that Tom Holland has gone to really sell this character. And also a really interesting kind of deep dive into how they put the effects over his street clothes. So he'll be doing stunt work wearing a suit, but they will put the spider suit over top of him. And just the level of commitment, too, because they've got a whole bunch of behind the scenes. Everybody's on wires and stuff. And in this particular sequence, Tom Holland's talking about how hard it is to make that perfect landing. Much respect to Tom Holland and his physical work, but also, I thought this the first time that I watched the film. I've really grown to admire his acting ability. He's got to sell a lot of really heavy emotional stuff, like the death of Aunt May. I'm spoiling everything here, so I hope you haven't seen it. which I also thought wasn't quite owned. I felt like we were not in Aunt May's world enough for us to get that heaviness and that hit, especially because there was no other parental figure apart from Aunt May in the lore that Jon Watts put together for his 3 films. So we didn't really have this other adult connection. I guess Tony Stark was a bit of a father figure for Peter Parker, but it wasn't quite the same as an Uncle Ben like we saw in the other Spider-Man movies. And so I felt like we took out Aunt May a little bit too soon. I would have liked to have seen her in the next iterations, or wherever we're going to go now with Tom Holland. But of course, that shock of like, wow, they got rid of Marisa Tomei's awesome Aunt May so early. I think in the lore, that really hit me hard when I saw it the first time. And now that I've watched it over and over again, I can kind of see that the mechanisms are there to kind of teach Tom Holland's Spider-Man that he has to grow up and he has to accept responsibility, and every choice is going to have repercussions. And he makes some pretty heavy choices in this film, which I dug. But counterbalance to the heaviness and the emotional kind of weight, of course, is all of the humor. These are really funny films. Maybe that's what I kind of felt was a little bit weird with Doctor Strange too, is, Strange has a comedic streak in his movies because he's sardonic or in his first movie. We'll see how funny Doctor Strange 2 is. But it's a different kind of humor than the Spider-Man humor. And I felt like they pushed Doctor Strange's comedy in a different direction, kind of a little bit more juvenile, a little bit more goofball. And I just didn't feel like that fit the character, right? The character just seemed to be a little bit more. I mean, I like this little bit where he can't really make the landing and stuff, and he's in a winter coat and all that stuff. But the gag reel is super fun in Spider-Man No Way Home, and all of the behind-the-scenes extras are absolutely worth it. It's a hypnotic movie. It's one where I think I like the other 2 Spider-Man movies still more than Spider-Man No Way Home, which I know people think is nuts, but I just like them as contained vehicles for this character and his friends to kind of evolve, and they did a really good job setting all of that stuff. And No Way Home got massive and huge, and because it is so massive and huge and filled with so many pieces to enjoy, I think it's more rewatchable than the other Spider-Man movies, although I like those better. Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man 2 is still my favorite, but Spider-Man's had a really good run on film, and I'm very curious to see where they go now, because we've got an adult Tom Holland sort of claiming the mantle of Spider-Man. He's no longer a kid that is pretending to be Spider-Man. He really has kind of owned that. So very, very interested to see where this franchise goes now. I gave Spider-Man No Way Home, after the theatrical experience, a 7.5 out of 10. I'm way less critical of it now. I really appreciate it now. I think it's tremendously fun entertainment. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10 now that we can watch it in home video.